Makebi Zulu speaks out. No widow should plead for dignity. A message to Zambia. Good day, Zambia. Tonight, one of the nation's most talked about lawyers, Makebi Zulu, has delivered a message that's touched hearts and stirred debate across the country. His words were simple, but powerful. No widow should plead for dignity. But who was this message really for? Was it aimed at those in power, or at a system that seems to have forgotten compassion? And what does it reveal about the growing tension between justice, politics, and humanity in Zambia today? In a country still reeling from political divisions and the fallout of Edgar Lungu's legacy, Makebi Zulu has emerged as one of the loudest voices defending what he calls basic human decency. Speaking before a gathering in Lusaka, Makebi didn't just defend the widow in question. He challenged a culture of humiliation and political persecution. In his own words, "A nation that makes its widows beg for respect has lost its moral compass." Tonight, we unpack his statement, the reactions it sparked, and what it means for Zambia's political and moral landscape. Zambia is watching closely as Makebi Zulu delivers one of his most emotional and powerful messages yet. No widow should plead for dignity. In this video, we explore what sparked his statement, the reactions from political leaders and citizens, and what this could mean for Zambia's moral and political climate moving forward. Was Makebi speaking for justice, or making a subtle challenge to those in power? Join us as we unpack the story behind his message, and what it reveals about leadership, compassion, and the state of democracy in Zambia today. Watch to the end for reactions from the public and key figures in the legal community. The revelation came to light on June 5, 2025, when Edgar Lungu, Zambia's 6th president, passed away in South Africa where he had traveled to seek medical attention. What should have been a straightforward matter of mourning and burial quickly descended into one of the most contentious legal and political disputes in recent Zambian history. Within days of the former president's death, tensions emerged between the Lungu family and the Zambian government led by President Hakainde Hichilema. The government, citing state protocol and the former president's Benefits and Privileges Act, insisted that Lungu was entitled to a state funeral at Embassy Park in Lusaka, the designated burial site for former heads of state. But the family, through their legal counsel and spokesperson, Honorable Makebi Zulu, a lawyer and former Eastern Province minister, took a different position. They argued that Edgar Lungu had explicitly expressed his wish not to be buried under the current administration, particularly not with President Hichilema presiding over the ceremonies. The family claimed this was documented in a video statement made by the late president himself. By early August, the impasse had escalated to the Pretoria High Court in South Africa. Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha filed an application seeking to prevent the family from burying Lungu in South Africa and demanding that the body be repatriated to Zambia for a state funeral. The family, represented by Makebi Zulu, initially reached what they believed to be a compromise. They would repatriate the body privately to Zambia, where a state funeral could proceed. However, on August 11, 2025, the Pretoria High Court issued a ruling that sent shockwaves through the Lungu household. The court ordered that the body be handed over directly to the Zambian government, not to the family. The sheriff was instructed to collect the remains from the undertaker and transfer them to state custody. The family, suddenly excluded from the very process of bringing their loved one home, was stunned. Makebi Zulu immediately announced on Newsroom Africa, a South African news platform, that the family would appeal the decision. He argued that the court had focused narrowly on a purported agreement while failing to address fundamental constitutional questions. The right to dignity, the authority of next of kin, and the question of whether public interest could truly override family rights in matters of burial. By late August, Cabinet Secretary Patrick Kangwa had reportedly reached out to the family in an attempt to negotiate, but Zulu maintained that no real talks had begun. Trust, he said, had been shattered by what the family perceived as relentless government propaganda and public attacks on their character. As of late October 2025, nearly 5 months after Edgar Lungu's death, his body remains in a South African morgue. The legal battle has moved to the South African Supreme Court of Appeal, and negotiations between the family and the government continue to stall. The nation watches, divided, as this unprecedented standoff drags on. In his explosive interview with Diamond TV from South Africa on August 27, Makebi Zulu did not mince words. His voice was firm, his frustration palpable. That judgment suggested that a president is a government trophy, with the family reduced to mere spectators. We reject that notion completely. He continued, addressing the ongoing attempts at negotiation. Cabinet Secretary Patrick Kangwa has reached out, but no real talks have begun and trust remains shattered. Government propaganda against the family continues. Any true negotiation must first recognize the family's rights and stop the public attacks. The family's position, Zulu explained, was simple but non-negotiable. Any send-off must be defined by the family's wishes, not by government spin. Anything less will not be acceptable. When pressed about the possibility of a prolonged legal battle, Zulu was resolute. Speaking on Newsroom Africa, he stated, "If it takes longer, so be it. What matters most is dignity, both for the family and for President Lungu. That dignity will not be traded for expedience or political theater." He elaborated on the family's grievances with the court's decision. In its ruling, the court talked about pacta sunt servanda, that agreements must be respected, but then went further to change the concessions that were reached by the family. We had agreed that the body would be repatriated privately by the family into Zambia, where he could be accorded a state funeral. The court instead ordered that the sheriff collect the body from the undertaker and hand it over to the Zambian government, excluding the family from the process. That is one ground of appeal. Zulu went on to challenge the court's reasoning. The court did not address the right to dignity. It did not address who, as next of kin, is entitled to the body. That is a very important question. We felt the court erred when it said public interest overrides that of the family. And whose public interest? Which public was the court dealing with? His questions became sharper. If they were dealing with Zambian public interest, what clothes them with the authority to deal with the Zambian system? The family even floated a controversial option, one that sent ripples through Zambian political circles. If the courts ultimately ruled against them, Zulu announced, the family was prepared to proceed with a private burial in South Africa, restricting attendance to only those they deemed necessary. Invoking international precedent, Zulu referenced Nelson Mandela's funeral. The office of president does not override family rights, he insisted. Then came perhaps the most provocative statement of all. In late October, Zulu declared on national media, "If HH today appoints someone else to preside over Lungu's funeral, we are ready to bring the body to Zambia in 2 seconds." He doubled down on the family's core demand. We have to respect the widow and the family. As for threats of arrest if I return to Zambia, we have not committed any offense. Let's stick to the truth. We are here, and we will protect that wish, even if it means any of us going to prison for wanting to honor the wishes of ECL. His message to the nation was clear. The family's goal is simple, a dignified send-off. That cannot be guaranteed if the very people accused of violating his rights in life are put in charge of his burial in death. This standoff raises profound questions that extend far beyond one family's grief. At its core, this is a constitutional and philosophical debate about the nature of power, the limits of state authority, and the meaning of dignity itself. Legal experts in Zambia and South Africa have been divided. Some argue that the former president's act is clear. Former heads of state are entitled to state funerals, and the government has both the right and the obligation to ensure this protocol is followed. They point out that Edgar Lungu, despite any personal wishes, served as president of Zambia, a role that comes with certain expectations even in death. Others, however, raise serious concerns about the erosion of family rights. Constitutional lawyer and human rights advocates have questioned whether the South African court's decision to prioritize public interest over next-of-kin authority sets a dangerous precedent. As one legal analyst noted, if we accept that the state can override family wishes in burial matters simply because the deceased held public office, where does that authority end? The public reaction in Zambia has been fierce and deeply polarized. Supporters of the current government argue that the Lungu family is being disrespectful to the nation, turning what should be a moment of unity into a political spectacle. Social media has been flooded with comments accusing Makebi Zulu of exploiting the situation for personal political gain, particularly after he announced his intention to run for president in 2026. One citizen wrote, "Which dignity with a lady that labels the anatomy of a human being?" Makebi is fattening his bank account with his senseless legal advice to the poor family members. The longer he prolongs this issue, the more money in his pocket. Another commentator asked pointedly, "There is something not normal in this case, something seriously wrong." True, they are buying time to hide something. But the family's defenders see the matter very differently. They argue that the government's heavy-handed approach proves the family's point, that Edgar Lungu cannot receive a dignified burial from an administration that allegedly persecuted him in life. Many Zambians sympathetic to the opposition Patriotic Front Party view this as yet another example of political vindictiveness. The Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia weighed in, with one religious leader stating that the state cannot bury without the family. A position that resonated with those who believe family rights are sacred, regardless of political considerations. There's also the troubling question of timing and motivation. Why has the body remained in a morgue for nearly 5 months? Is this truly about respecting Edgar Lungu's wishes, or has it become, as some critics allege, a political chess piece? The fact that Makebi Zulu declared his presidential candidacy while still representing the family has added fuel to accusations of opportunism. Yet beneath all the political noise lies a more fundamental question that every Zambian, indeed every African, must grapple with. What does dignity mean? Is it about grand state ceremonies and protocol? Or is it about honoring the expressed wishes of the deceased and respecting the grief of those left behind? The widow, Esther Lungu, has remained largely in the background of this public drama, but her silence speaks volumes. For many observers, the image of a widow unable to bury her husband because of political disagreements is profoundly disturbing, regardless of where one stands politically. This case has also exposed deeper fractures in Zambian society. Unresolved tensions from the political transition of 2021, lingering questions about corruption allegations against the previous administration, and a lack of trust between political factions that extends even into matters of life and death. International observers have watched with a mixture of fascination and concern. This is not merely a Zambian issue. It touches on universal questions about the balance between state power and individual rights, between public duty and private grief. And there we have it, viewers. A story that is far from over, a question that remains unanswered, and a nation still waiting to see how this unprecedented chapter in its history will close. As we've seen today, this is not simply about one family or one funeral. This is about what we, as a people, value. Do we value protocol over personal wishes? Do we believe the state has unlimited authority over its citizens, even in death? Or do we recognize that some rights, like the right to dignity, the right to mourn in peace, the right of a family to lay their loved one to rest, transcend politics? Makebi Zulu has said, "No widow should plead for dignity." Whether you agree with his methods or question his motives, that statement carries weight. It asks us to imagine ourselves in that widow's shoes, to consider what we would want for our own families if the unthinkable happened. What do you think, viewers? Should the family be allowed to proceed with their wishes, even if it means a private burial in South Africa? Or does the government have a legitimate right to insist on a state funeral for a former president? And perhaps most importantly, how do we find a path forward that honors both the law and the human heart? Thank you so much for watching this edition of InspirAfrica Official. Your engagement means the world to us, so please, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a respectful, thoughtful discussion about this complex situation. Share this video if you found it informative, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next deep dive into the stories shaping our continent. Until tomorrow, when we return with more news, more analysis, and more of the stories that matter to you, this is Nakash.